I'm Sean O'Neill and welcome to my weekly podcast where I chat to the key figures who shape and lead their industries. Today my guest is Richard Moat.
There's a lot of fear-mongering that goes on in society, and that's why courage is so important.
Are people then becoming used to that fear and not even realising that they're afraid anymore?
The majority of people alive today have mastered the art of suppressing their feelings.
I trained myself and fooled myself into thinking that them things didn't exist anymore because I suppressed it so well.
Well, welcome to the world. This is what people have done successfully for a long time.
There's so many ways to make your life better, to add value, and one side that I didn't really, although probably thought I knew a lot about, is the emotional side of life. And we do talk about it, but it's one thing that maybe is really misunderstood or not taken so seriously. And the first time your name got mentioned, it captivated me because you're probably one of the first people that the first person that I've ever met who understands health, well-being from an emotional side, to how to connect deep, and instead of creating all these exterior things to make you a better version, you have the knowledge and the ability to get people to look deep inside themselves and fix or enhance or become better from deep inside. Where did that all start?
When did it start? Well, really, I suppose I got into it when I started studying to understand why or what I could do to help my father with his cancer. My father was diagnosed with cancer. And up until that point in my life, I'd been very much into sport, performance. Sport opens a lot of doors. So I spent a lot of time with high-performing athletes, and we'd share notes as to what do you do when this happens, and what's your approach here, and what's your thought process when you're coming to a big event or whatever it might be. So I was very much into achievement on the sports field and in the boardroom. And then my father contracted cancer, and I thought, right, I want to be able to help him. But the stuff that I knew up to that point, it was very much positive thinking, positive mental attitude, that type of thing. And I wasn't convinced that was going to help him. So I thought, well, how could I maybe help him? Because this really rocked our family. I mean, it would for most families, I think, a diagnosis of cancer, especially when it was not expected. So I decided I would start to study medicine. Now, just to be very, very clear, I wasn't academic at all. So at school, my favorite thing to do was play hockey. And I reckon I probably was in the bottom 5% academically at my school. However, I discovered hockey. That really lit my life up. Really enjoyed it. I set a goal of playing for England, which I did at the age of 17. I then set the goal of captaining England, which I didn't do for quite some time until after that. So because I wasn't academic, but I desperately wanted to help my father in whatever way I could, I started picking up some books about the different models of health and healing and medicine from around the world, just to see whether or not there was anything I could get from that might help him.
Was there anyone that guided you, or did you just take a book off the shelf because it sounded like the right one to read? How do you actually know where to start?
It was potluck. I really didn't have an idea where to start. I was just committed to wanting to help. Because when you see your mum and your sister not crumple, but really be adversely affected by the cancer diagnosis. I'm an elder brother, so I felt responsible to be able to do something. And because of the work that I did, I thought, well, okay, maybe I'm well placed here. So no, I've still got my very first book that I bought on the subject. It's on my bookshelf in my home office. So I just picked up a book, started reading, and there were bits in it that I liked. I thought, that's interesting. Then I got another book and another book. And I found that the more books I picked up from different bookshops about different models of health and well-being, there was one common denominator that kept appearing in all of these reported models of health and well-being in medicine. And this was the fact that our thoughts and our feelings influence our health. Now, up until that point, it had never occurred to me that thoughts and feelings affected our health. I knew about positive mental attitude and how you could lift your state and improve your mood by chanting or whatever it might be, but I never really appreciated that the nuances of the type of thoughts that we have and the type of feelings that we have could play a role, let alone such a significant role, in our health and well-being. So I thought,
which is kind of obvious when you say it. It goes like, well, obvious it is.
well, it is now.
Yeah, it is now. You tell me.
Well, I didn't mean now that I've told you.
Yeah, but yeah.
For more people, it's more obvious now because it's not quite mainstream, but it's certainly more accepted. Well, I mean, I'm talking back in the 90s now. So I was really intrigued by this, and I thought, there's something in this. And I decided then to start learning how to help heal thoughts and feelings, if it was at all possible, because there were plenty of modalities out there and different approaches and philosophies that would give advice on this is how you overcome this and this is how you overcome that. And I found that very interesting. But something was telling me to start studying Western medicine. Now, I'd always had an aversion to Western medicine. And I remember when it started, I was very, very young. We used to go to the doctors, and every time we would walk into the doctor's surgery, if I was with my mum, there was a tangible change in her energy. And it was as if she'd stepped into some arena of some description and she was really feeling threatened. So I picked this up sort of unconsciously. But anyway, I digress. Going to the doctors was something that I never enjoyed doing. But back in the day, it was a case of, well, if the doctor said, do this, then you did that. And if the doctor said, I'm sorry, it's this, then you believed it. But eventually I got round to picking up the history of medicine, the history of modern medicine, which is apparently when you study to become a doctor, the first couple of weeks of studying, I think it certainly was, I don't know what it is now, around about 7 years of study. Very early on, you learn about the history of medicine. So I bought the textbooks.
Is this one version of the history?
Well, yes, it is. It's a version of the history. That's for another podcast, right? So I started reading this book, and within, 10 pages of the history of modern medicine, there was a piece about Hippocrates, and most people have heard of Hippocrates. He's considered to be the father of medicine. Very wise man, apparently. He said a lot of different things at different times. The thing that grabbed me when I read it was something along the lines of, it's more important to know what type of person has the illness than what type of illness the person has. And that really struck a chord with me, because in all of the other books that I'd been studying of all the other models of medicine, they talked about the character and the disposition and the attitude of the individual who was experiencing the physical symptom. So at that point, I put the books down and I was convinced, okay, this is important. This is real. I want to know as much as I possibly can about this and how to use this principle that thoughts and feelings affect our health. Because if it's as simple as that, and turns out it's not as simple as that, but it's a very significant part of our health and well-being. Then I want to know how I can help my father, if I can help my father. So then I started studying the field, in particular, of the mind-body connection.
Would people now sort of summarize it as like a placebo nearly, where they think they're able to heal themselves? They think they're being healed, but actually they're healing themselves without even knowing it?
Well, the thing about placebo is it applies right across the board. So whether you take a pill, whether you have a massage, whether you chant, or whether you just believe that you're going to get better, there's a placebo consistent in every approach. And it's reckoned that round about 25 to 33% of anything that we believe in will heal us. 25 to 33% is going to be accurate. So it's going to work to that degree. So we can really sort of discount placebo because it applies universally to whatever approach you might be taking. So then it was more a case of, well, who knows about this stuff? And there weren't many people back in the 90s that I could find who really knew about this stuff. However, I sought them out, I went and listened to them, I was mentored by a few of them, and I learned very, very quickly that actually the thing that matters most is not what we think, but it is actually what we feel, or what we don't feel in some cases. So this then made me realize, actually, I want to focus on emotions. I want to understand how our emotional tapestry, how our emotional makeup, the ecosystem that we have internally that's referred to as our emotions, as it were, how they actually work, how they function, and how they contribute to either health or wellness. So I took a bit of a tangent because I was so interested in it. And unfortunately, by this time, my dad had passed away. So everything that I'd learned, I really hadn't been able to use in the pursuit of helping him get well. But I suppose the poetry in all of it is that it was a bit like part of my dad's role was to get me onto this path. And having done that, he sort of left, type of thing. And it's quite poetic, it's quite upsetting at times, it's quite romantic to think of that, but I'm absolutely convinced, because what I've done since really has been something that, it makes my heart sing to talk about this subject. It makes my heart sing to help people understand their emotions, how to engage with them, the type of relationship to have with them, not to fear them, to befriend them. And the results that people are getting, they're not getting with many other approaches. And I'm not saying it's the only approach, but I'm absolutely convinced that if we don't take care of our emotional health, then we're not giving ourselves the best chance of living an optimally healthy life. So there's a long-winded answer to a very short question.
Well, that's a very good answer, and I think everyone listening will say, that makes so much sense. But in order of maybe how to get to there, my journey has been, okay, I need to eat healthy, I need to exercise, because you sort of, or whether it's you're brought up understanding this is what health is, and then you go to the next level. Okay, you start eating healthy, you start exercising, then through whatever path, I've, looking back at what you've taught me, it's always been something that I have maybe tried to knock the door on, but never maybe put in the effort to read the books a bit more, never went that extra mile to find these answers, or maybe the timing just wasn't right, and now is the time for me to enter the world of health and well-being and being the best version of myself, because I've ticked the other boxes. Because it's a bit like how I've found my journey of health at times was like a New Year's resolution. At times I tried to do all 10 at once.
Right.
I exercised, I ate healthy, I meditated, and I ultimately tried to tick all the boxes in the January.
And how did you get on?
But by February, all the boxes were unticked.
Okay.
As I've realised that it has to be step by step. Probably I emotionally gave myself a break because I realised, well, if I eat well and I understand how to eat well, that'll be part of it. So I don't need to think about it anymore. If I exercise, if I take my supplements, if I, emotionally I'm able to control or help things a little bit. And now I'm at the stage with you where you have, it's just like another level. It's like, to bring it back to maybe what we most of us want to diet, and we say we know if we eat healthy we lose weight and we look better. But when you've actually done it and you feel healthy, you go, oh my God, but you kind of knew that was going to be the result. I'm now sitting thinking, I knew that if I get to this level of starting to understand the emotions, it's going to be like, oh my God, and you've helped me get to that stage that I knew that it's obvious looking back. It's probably like if you work hard and you do the right thing, you make money. If you do the right thing by your family, you've got a good family. If you do, it's like so obvious in hindsight. But sometimes you need that person to help you on the journey. You need to have that space in your mind or inside you to say, right, now is the time to dedicate and I've done that with your help to get deep down and understand this emotional journey, which is now of learning, not of it's not a struggle, it's a joy to really get deep down and understand it.
Well, I'm very glad that you shared that, and I'm pleased that it...
Mm-hmm. And again, it's mind-blowing to think that it's not that difficult if you actually just put in that bit of time and effort and allow it in. Probably like almost everything in life, isn't it? If you just allow it to be and you put in the effort, it really becomes enjoyable.
Well, it can do. I mean,
but difficult as well. There's been difficult times where you have to go through that little barrier of, oh, this is uncomfortable. This is the results of, I suppose, almost like anything, whether it's diet, whether it's exercise. People talk about how they love the gym and the pain. They fooled themselves into thinking they love the gym. It's not nice to hurt your muscles, but you've trained yourself understanding the result of hurting becomes this amazing result. And you've helped me go through the barriers of digging deep emotionally, confronting things that maybe has been hidden or I just didn't want to confront. But when you push through, it becomes really an incredible experience that's definitely worth experiencing.
Well, I'm glad you've had that experience. I mean, I like the word, I prefer the word reveal.
Reveal.
I mean, typically the word confront, a lot of people have an aversion to that because it suggests conflict or meeting with resistance.
Probably that's what I've maybe done all my life. I've battled my way through and I've got success, but I didn't have to battle. I had to sort of, embrace the things instead of battle.
And I suppose if you'd known at the time that you didn't have to battle, you wouldn't have battled, would you? But at the time, we all have frames of reference for different things. And we'll have a set of beliefs and we'll act in line with those beliefs. And if the outcome that we get from acting in line with those beliefs is what we want, then those beliefs become even more embedded. Now, the reality is that most people will try and change their behavior to get a better result because they believe that if I stop doing this, or if I stop eating sugar, or if I go to the gym more, that behavior, I believe, will get me the results that I want. And a lot of people have existed at this sort of level of understanding, belief, behavior, behavior, belief, that type of thing. And it's back to your earlier point. So many people, and this is through no fault of anybody's, so many people have failed to appreciate that behind the belief, back here, perhaps here because it's hidden, are how we feel about things. Regardless of the nature of the feeling, how we feel. So it's the feelings that we have that create the beliefs, that then create the behaviors. So in order to be able to change our behaviors, and if we feel we want to change our beliefs, it's not about working here with them. It's about understanding, okay, what are the feelings and emotions that are driving that belief, that's driving that behavior? And this is one of the reasons why it's so important to at least pay attention to and give importance to how we are feeling. Because if you think about most things every day of the week, wherever you might be in the world, what drives us, what moves us is how we feel about something, regardless of what the feeling is. So going there is not something typically that a lot of people will do. We're not encouraged to do that. Society typically doesn't say, oh yeah, let's explore what you're feeling about that, so that if you're not feeling good about it, we can check. People don't do that.
Is it fair to give you an analogy of mine where I feel that if whatever the task may be, or whatever whatever the result is that I want to find, I feel that if I didn't go down the path of exploring an opportunity to make myself better, that feeling inside, it would hurt me to think that I haven't given it a chance.
There's a good example, and that hurts the driver.
Yeah, because, or that fear of thinking that, am I going to live with that saying, what if? And that has, been my driver probably all my life, to explore new things, to try and, I guess, make myself better as a person. But it's more about that I'm not going to become the best version of me if I don't explore these feelings, and I allow just my dreams to or ambitions to allow my dreams or ambitions to stay inside. I always feel that if I have to go on that journey, and if it doesn't turn out exactly how I want it to, but at least I've understood it. And it gives me peace then, that at least I've understood that isn't for me, or that path in life isn't for me, or that certain business, friendship, food, country, whatever it is, just isn't for me. But at least I understood it from exploring it.
Well, that takes courage. See, that's one thing, that if we can find courage to not let the fear of something stop us from doing something that would be good for us. See, we're all afraid. We're wired to be afraid. I mean, for heaven's sake, we have a fight or flight response built into this blueprint of who we are as human beings. So we need to be able to be afraid. Absolutely. Unfortunately, what seems to have happened is most people are living a life where fear is their default response to most things, whether it's the fear of failure, or the fear of loss, or the fear of feeling something you don't want to feel, or the fear of upsetting somebody else by speaking your truth. When there are certain times when, even though we're afraid, it's really very important that we don't let the fear stop us. And that's why I say it takes courage, because there's a lot of fear-mongering that goes on in society. There's a lot of it in most places. If you look hard enough, and sometimes you don't need to look very hard enough at all. That's not very good English, is it? You look very hard enough. Yes, you don't need to look very hard some of the time. And this explains why there's been such a rise in what's referred to as general or free-floating anxiety. People have got used to feeling afraid, which means they're used to worrying and doubting. That creates huge uncertainty. And if we're uncertain, we're going to take less risks. And that's why courage is so important. And let me pick up...
Are people then becoming used to that fear and not even realizing that they're afraid anymore? Is it becoming like just they've accepted that's the way things are? Do you think, are they aware of I'm afraid to do that, or have they just accepted that I'm just going to live with that? Is it apparent to them, or they get conditioned to?
To some people, it will be. You know, none of these things are black and white. You know, we can't say that absolutely it's this or absolutely it's that. I think generally speaking, though, because most of us have got used to living fearfully, it's become unconscious. Because if we do something enough, it becomes a habit, and habits then become unconscious. So the problem that we have then, when something is unconscious, is we're not aware of when we're doing it. And one of the most important things that we can do is to become aware of what we're feeling, yes, so that we can at least say, okay, now the reason I'm behaving that way is because I actually feel ashamed of what's just happened, or I'm angry about what's just happened, or whatever it might be. So it's about becoming aware of how we're feeling, ideally, but let's face it, there are a lot of feelings that people don't want to become aware of. You know, no one holds their hands up and say, hey, look, I want to spend some time exploring just how angry, sad, afraid, hurt, ashamed, and guilty I feel. People don't do that. They do the opposite. It's, okay, hang on a second.
Mask it.
So mask it, or the best word I think for it is to suppress it. There's expression, which is very healthy under the right circumstances, and suppression. There is nothing healthy about that in the long run.
Yeah.
So we've learned...
I think I've become... I trained myself to suppress things and fool myself into thinking that them things didn't exist anymore because I suppressed it so well.
Well, welcome to the world. This is what people have done successfully for a long time.
I've become extremely good at suppressing, to the point where I lived many years thinking that a lot of these things didn't exist, and I had sort of, for want of a better word, beaten these feelings, but you do realize it rises its head then. But what you have done is help me embrace, help me uncover these things, and then also just accept and then use them as a tool to make me better. Because when you understand something, you can then, in a deeper connection, you can also then start to understand other people. And what's been mind-blowing for me is I've done quite well out of life thinking that I've understood people, but maybe I've just tried to convince people that come on the journey with me, where now it's like no, I'm I'm on the journey with you. I'm looking through their lens. And this is, in recent months working with you, I've gone from trying to get people to understand my lens, and now I'm like, no, that's hard work. Why do I not just put myself on to inside what they're seeing, what they're feeling, what they're thinking? And that's been an incredible game changer.
Nice.
And also help me be really, really calm and enjoy the process to the next level.
Great. Yeah. And you found it quite easy, haven't you, once you've understood it? And this is credit to your capacity to want to understand something before you then perhaps apply it. Because going back to your point, the majority of people alive today have mastered the art of suppressing their feelings, especially those that we don't want to feel. And that's not a sustainable behavior. And I remember you saying once in one of our conversations just how lighter and how much freer you feel, having identified what it is that you can feel, but also expressing those feelings, whereas previously, you would have suppressed them. And as a starting point, it can be as simple as that. Not just for you, but for anybody. The idea of let's give voice to the truth about how we're feeling. It doesn't matter what you're feeling in particular. It doesn't matter what the emotion is. And it doesn't matter why you're feeling it. The fact that you're feeling it and it's in here means that you're holding on to the feeling or feelings. And if you do that well enough for long enough, you become emotionally constipated. Most people are living a life where they're doing this with all of their unwanted feelings and emotions. And we can understand why, because who wants to sign up to feel the full force of them? But when we can develop a relationship with our emotions that helps us appreciate, they give us feedback. That to keep them suppressed creates toxicity internally. So physiologically and biologically and chemically, when we suppress emotions, which aren't designed to be suppressed, let's face it, then we can create havoc internally. We can place extra strain on the different systems within the body, and that can lead to a breakdown in our physical health as well. So there are consequences.
Did this exist thousands of years ago, whenever you were in a village or a small area where everybody had the same, had the same wealth, they had the same mud huts, they had the same they had the same everything, they had the same food, they all went to bed at the same time because they had to get up and hunt together in the morning. Did that exist back then, or is this like some sort of modern, have we created this because of the world we live in now?
It's certainly not the latter. We haven't just created this because of the world we live in. And to go back to your question, the principle has been around for thousands of years. Anyone who, for example, has studied Chinese medicine will appreciate that Chinese medicine places a lot of emphasis on the energy meridians within the body. Now, energy is a very significant topic because the word emotion derives from the saying energy in motion. So when we feel an emotion of any description, what we are feeling, what we're experiencing is the movement of energy through us. Now, energy can only do one thing. It has one job. It exists for one purpose, and that is to flow. Energy is designed to flow. Apparently, and I haven't checked this out, but I believe the literature, the whole universe works on energy. Everything vibrates at its own unique energetic frequency. So on the basis that everything is energy and energy needs to be allowed to flow, every time we stop our emotions from flowing, we are effectively stemming the natural force of the way the universe works. And we're doing it internally. So you can see perhaps how the idea of blocking or suppressing or stopping the flow of energy can create barriers, problems, things to break down, things to fall over, things to not work properly, but not just internally. You think about relationships. If we have an open relationship where I'm letting you know how I'm feeling about something, and you don't have a problem with me telling you how I'm feeling about something, then we're going to get much further. But also, I've been able to offload how I'm feeling, so it's out, not in. which means that when I leave this conversation, I don't leave with the emotional baggage I turned up with. And I think baggage is a good word for it.
That's where for most of us, well, I assume we have a best friend, or we have somebody that we just look forward to meeting up with, or we can just tell them anything and they won't judge us, and they'll help us with our whatever we need help with, or they'll just make us feel good. And if you can bring that into, your best friend can also be your partner, well, that must be a beautiful place, because that's where you're able to just be yourself, and someone can be there emotionally for you. And it's I've got a really good friend, and the more that I've learned from you, him and his wife are just best friends, where they can tell each other anything, and in a very sort of simple, uncomplicated way. That's how they've helped each other through things, because they have just there's no suppression. They are able to just offload, or there's probably very little left to suppress. They don't have to offload much, but they feel completely free with each other. The energy, it just works. And when they're together, it works.
A good example. Yeah. You see, and that's possible for all of us. The challenge is it requires us to be aware of the value and the importance of expressing our truth, of being able and willing to listen to someone share their truth without judgment, to make them feel safe, that type of thing. But we also need role models who demonstrate that it's safe, it's a good idea, it's healthy. And, as children, we live what we learn. Yeah. So whatever we learn from our role models, typically parents, not always, but typically, then if we understand that emotional expression is something that is encouraged, and we do it ourselves, and we're not stopped from doing it, we're then going to have a very healthy relationship with our emotions. We're not going to feel as though there's something wrong with us, or that there's something bad about feeling something, because we've learned it's okay to express them. Unfortunately, over recent decades, it's become more the norm that it's not okay to express how you're feeling. It's not good, it's not healthy, it's not smart. And we see this a lot lately in the debate about men's health, in particular men's health, because it would appear that men aren't that good at expressing their feelings. They don't want to appear to be weak, so they don't reveal to their friends how they're feeling. Now, that may well be the case, but it's not doing anybody any good. And if we look at what that is an example of, that is a cast iron example of how fear stops us from saying, yeah, do you know what? I'm not feeling great today. It's the fear that we will be judged as being less than or weak or not manly enough to share the truth about how we're feeling. And in this example, would it be healthy to be able to share with someone how we're feeling if we're not feeling great? Well, we've already established that doing this, not good, doing that, much better. So what stops someone from doing that in this example? It's the fear. So take away the fear of expressing how you're feeling. It becomes easier to express how you're feeling. And once it's out, here's the good thing. Once you've expressed a feeling, you can't get it back. It's a one-way street with no option to U-turn. Gone.
How important is it for that same person, although they want to express, to have the ability to listen? Because to express, you need to have somebody that has the ability to listen.
Not always. No.
But I have found, and whether this has just worked at the exact same time, or well, you have really helped me through our time together to understand the value of being able to listen. So I have understood how to express, but I also have understood the importance of being able to listen. And I feel that if it's one way, that if more of us could listen instead of maybe talk. I find in the past that I thought that I was a good listener, but I was probably listening because I wanted to, there's a conversation where both people are giving advice and nobody's actually listening. And I've realized that was me. It's like, yes, yeah, we're just firing ideas, but no one's actually. And the value, that skill of being able to listen and not judge and be silent and not give your penny's worth of information while somebody is there just maybe offloading or expressing themselves to you, I found it just has helped me. It's just another piece of the puzzle but it seemed to happen exactly, well, not seemed to happen, you've taught me this, but you taught me those two things at the same time. Was that because you knew that I needed to do it together, or was it just, is it needed to be, or is there already people out there that can listen but do suppress, or does it go together?
They're very separate things. They're two separate skills. To answer one of your questions, there was no deliberate conscious choice on my part to share them with you or for them to come up at the same time. No. The reality is that when we're younger, a lot of the time we would have a good talking to from our elders, but none of us had a good listening to.
Yeah.
We've been missing that. So when we grow up in the world and we come across someone who is listening to us, it's very compelling, it's very seductive, and it's pretty rare. That's why it's such a valuable skill to be able to listen to somebody. No doubt about it. But let's park that, because listening to someone is very, very different from expressing the truth of how you feel, because we don't need someone to express to. Sometimes it's believed that, well, I can't tell you how I'm feeling because it's about you. Well, if it's not appropriate for me to tell you how I'm feeling because it's about you, well, I need to go into a quiet room with nobody else and just say it out loud.
Tell yourself.
Or tell myself, or write it down. Because the most important thing is that I get it out. So whether I get it out in writing, whether I get it out in a quiet room, whether I get it out in the gym because I'm punching a punch, for example, as long as I'm doing that, then I'm achieving the objective of, I suppose it's a form of detoxification.
I remember the exercise we did that you made me shout and scream. I'm not saying the words that I was saying, but
that's a bit dramatic.
Louder.
Screaming.
Louder.
That's it.
I remember
That's
we
it.
did it was definitely a roar then.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I went, actually that felt great.
See, there you go. It's a perfect example of not only the value but the importance of getting out whatever it is that's in here, but it doesn't require another person. It doesn't. Now, if I want to tell you about how I'm feeling, and the experience is one where you're present, you're respectful, you're listening, you're genuinely interested, that's going to help. There's no doubt about that. But it's not necessary. So, and that's why I'm saying they're separate. You can be an excellent listener, and you can be completely emotionally constipated at the same time. This is the problem. The stuff we hold on to is problematic. This skill of being able to listen, that'll take anybody a long way, no doubt about it. And we need more of it.
That's why my grandma is and will probably be my favorite person ever, because my grandma listened.
She listened. See, there we go.
I remember a funny story. I was about 8 or 9 years of age, and we went to mass, and as a typical child, she upset me, And I said to her, and I don't know exactly what it was, but in the middle, just before the priest had arrived, I said, "You don't listen to me, and it's not fair." And I offloaded this thing, and I was expecting. I just thought I had this courage to I'm going to tell her now. And I was expecting. I didn't know what to expect, but I thought that I'm going to get it back. She's going to say, "How dare you say it?" I guess so, but I had to let it go. And she looked at me, and she said, "It won't happen again."
Well, look, the fact that you've had someone in your life who's been able to demonstrate and model that for you is a wonderful gift. Because another way of considering it, and look, all of this is my opinion anyway. My opinion is that we're not emotionally mature enough to be able to listen, not react, to consider what's being said, and to go, fair enough. And that's because we're all walking around carrying unhealed emotional wounds. Someone has a go at you for something, or it might not be you, but they express themselves in a way that you're uncomfortable with. It can trigger those feelings in us. So your behavior might trigger a feeling inside of me. I then associate that feeling with you, and then I start blaming you for making me feel hurt, angry, scared.
My nan used to say to me, "A good laugh is as good as medicine." And for all of us, if we maybe, could take that principle and bring that into everyday life, if a good laugh is as good as medicine, maybe the part of us living longer or healthier or enjoying is taking that emotional baggage and replacing it with a bit more, not suppressed, just a bit more enjoyment spent with the people that you love. I think there's some really great research about the people that live the longest are people that are the happiest.
And there's a very simple exercise that you can do to establish whether or not you're still carrying with you some emotional baggage from the past. And that is, think about something that happened in the past that wasn't particularly nice, that affected you emotionally. But it must be in the past. Now, okay, the past can be in the last 10 minutes, last 10 days, 10 years. Just think about something that happened in the past. So the event's gone, the event's over, we can't change history. But if today, when you think about something that happened in the past, if today you can feel feelings about what happened, then that tells us that today, at least, you're not emotionally over what happened back then, which means that you are still carrying the emotional impact of what happened back then today. Now, some people are very aware that they're carrying emotional baggage from the past. Some people have done such a good job of denying it or avoiding it or suppressing it or pretending it's not there that they don't believe they are, or what a lot of people do is they believe they're over that thing. Oh, it was a long time ago, I'm over it now, it's behind me now. Well, the way to know if you're really over it is to ask yourself today, and you've got to be honest, not you, but one has to be honest about this. Think back. And when you think back, do you get reconnected to feelings that you'd rather not feel about that thing? And if today you do, then you've got some emotional work that you could do once you've identified whatever those feelings were. So the only thing we need to know is, okay, today, how do you feel about that thing that happened way back? And if you feel anything that you'd rather not feel, regardless of how intensely, one of the simplest things you can do is either take a piece of paper and a writing implement and just write out how you're feeling, or find someone to share it with who will listen unconditionally, who will not judge, or go into a room by yourself, or a good place, shower, or when you're driving the car, and just unleash whatever it is about the truth that you can still feel today about that thing that happened back then, and you will get rid of that emotion that you have internally. Now, you've got to keep doing it until the feeling diminishes or the feeling disappears. And it's remarkably simple how, when we get it out, we can't get it back, and therefore our levels of anger, sadness, fear, guilt, whatever the feelings might be, start to go down and keep going down. And that then makes it possible for us to access other feelings that we have, and not to be continuously burdened by whatever the feelings were. Now, one event in the past. How many events do you think we all have, approximately, from our past that have upset us, angered us, made us feel sad, made us feel afraid, It's quite a few for all of us. And every time we don't express how we're feeling at the time, we create a back catalogue. Deposit goes in there, right? I'm feeling angry, but I'm not going to express it for whatever reason. Back catalogue. Sadness, guilt, hurt, shame, whatever it might be, back catalogue. So we move forward in life thinking that we're over that stuff, but actually it might be out of sight, but it's not out of mind. So because of this back catalogue idea, we've all really got to play a bit of catch up. And that's why I'm saying, think today about anything from the past. Take your pick, it doesn't matter. If you can still feel unwanted emotions today about anything that's happened in the past, know that those unwanted emotions exist. They're real. Because remember, emotion, energy in motion. If you're not expressing that emotion, then you are blocking the flow of energy internally, physiologically, and that's going to have an impact on our mood. It's going to have an impact on our health. And consequently, if we don't appreciate the role of taking care of our emotional well-being, then all of the dietary changes, the best nutrition, the best lifestyle, the most excellent of environments is only going to make a certain amount of progress towards you getting the results you want, because as long as the unresolved emotional stuff, stuff's a good word for it, unhealed emotional wounds exist, they will always have the capacity to trip us up. Because it means that if we're still angry, sad, afraid, hurt, ashamed, or guilty, we go into tomorrow predisposed to have those wounds opened.
Oh, the amount of days I've woke up in a bad mood or thinking about yesterday, or a month later you have to go to another meeting about something, and you've already created what's going to happen because it's here. The amount of times I've walked down the street and not realized how I got to the bottom of it, because inside my head I've gone through so many things that was unnecessary before. It's just endless sometimes. Yeah, it's to be aware of these things and release them is a beautiful place to be, really.
Well, I'm glad you say that, and I'd like to just make the distinction, if I may, between the reference to things being in your head. Because most people think that if it's in my head, then it's a thought, and if I'm feeling it, then the feeling is in my head. Technically speaking, the feeling is in the fabric of who we are. So the intellectual part of us holds the thought. The rest of us holds whatever the emotion is linked to the thought. And this is where I struggle with the term mental health today, because primarily when someone mentions mental health, it suggests that there's something going on, something wrong in your head with your thinking. And if you change your thinking, you'll change this and you'll change that. But it doesn't work that way. Now, this is maybe a conversation for another day. The origin of the term mental health is actually three things. It's just that the powers that be decided to use the term mental health to sum all of these three terms up. The three terms: psychological well-being, so we understand psychology, okay, thinking. Social well-being, how we interact, how we engage, how we connect. Do we belong to a community? Do we collaborate? Are we on our own? So we've got psychological well-being plus social well-being plus emotional well-being. The powers that be decided that's too long-winded, and they chose mental health to sum up those three topics. Now, I was at a, why am I laughing? I don't know. I was at a talk once given by one of the government advisors who was announcing this thing called mental health. And he gave this explanation. So it's psychological, it's social, it's emotional, and we've called it mental health. And I really struggled with that at the time, so I put my hand up and I said, excuse me, could you explain why you've chosen mental health when there are three different types of health here? And he blanked me at the time.
Was this a good marketing? Do you think that word would catch people?
I don't know. But unfortunately, I think the way that it's gone, if we look at it...
It terrifies people.
Well, it does. It makes people want to run a mile. And whilst I realize and appreciate it's very important that awareness is increased about it, I think we should really be... I say we as in not you and I, but I think people need to understand that mental health is too reductionist. And that there are aspects of what we think that could be adjusted. There are aspects of how we connect and socialize with people that could be adjusted. And also, we need to take a look at our emotional baggage, our emotional wounds, because it would appear that they have perhaps the greatest influence over our health of all three. Now, that's not a scientific statement, but if we look at the research that's been done, a lot of the research says that anywhere between 60 and 90% of the reason we're unwell is because of our unresolved emotional stuff. 60 to 90%. Now, there's still nutrition, there's still lifestyle, there's still environment, and there's still genetics to take into account. But even if we just look at this as 60% being emotionally driven, you can see why people do get results from nutrition, lifestyle, environment, absolutely. But maybe the explanation as to why people don't get the results they want long term, maybe it's because they're not looking at this aspect, emotional well-being. Now, obviously, I'm banging a drum for emotional well-being because I'm a fan of it, I understand it, and I know the impact that it has overall. But at least if people can become aware that don't ignore this aspect of who we are.
So for the person that's out there and listen to this and they say, oh, that's all well and good, but I can't afford to, meet these people, or I haven't got the time to meet these people. How can someone bring that into their, is there any way that they can bring it into their lives right now in a more simple way? What do they do? Is there you've researched, you've read, is there certain books, is there someone some steps they can follow, or how can they get on the first step of understanding their emotional side?
Well, a bit like I described earlier, really. Think about something from the past that when you think about it doesn't make you feel great at all. In fact, it makes you feel things you don't want to feel. Pen, paper, write it down. Write it all down. How do you feel? So every sentence begins with, I feel, or when I think about what happened 16 years ago with so-and-so, I can feel. Write it down, write it down, write it down, write it down. There's your content. If you're willing to think back to what happened and to write down those feelings that might be a bit scary to acknowledge and admit, but nevertheless, If you haven't got any money and you're willing, this wouldn't cost anything to do, then you've got your list. Now, these represent what I call truth statements. They represent the truth about how you feel about something that happened in the past. Okay, now all you've got to do is create the time and space to take that list and read through it. And speak out loud what it is that you've realized you feel when you think about that thing that happened back then. And keep saying it out loud. Increase the volume, increase the speed, increase the intensity. You just keep doing that, and there's only one thing that's going to happen. The intensity of those feelings has to drop. It has to drop.
And I am a witness to that.
Great example of it. And when you know how, remarkably simple, wouldn't you say?
I think my nan told me everything's simple when you know how. But I think I know it's about creating that space. Whatever you're going to do to make your life better, make yourself better, the people around you, it's about creating that space to let it happen.
Yeah, you're absolutely. It's like anything. If something matters enough, then we will find the time. It's just got to matter enough. And, you know, one of the best pieces of advice I could say to anybody is, look, if you want to feel better, you've got to get better at feeling. Just start with that. If you want to feel better about anything, get better at feeling. Now, there's the stuff from the past, the back catalogue. We need to play catch up. But what about moving forward? What about into the future? What do you want to do? Do you want to suppress again every time you feel something that you don't want to feel? Or do you want to find an outlet knowing that if you express it at the time, you don't carry it with you?
You have helped me get better at feeling. Through me getting better, I have helped a lot of people without them knowing go on their journey that I am on. It's been, you know, an amazing journey. More learning, lessons. It's incredible, and our journey is going to continue for a long time, because I enjoy your company. I share the same values. We love helping each other, and it's an honor, delight for you to be my friend, my mentor, to be able to come here today and share these values and stories. No doubt that you'll be back here again, because there's so much wisdom that you have, and we could sit here all day and share more and more stories and wisdom that could help so many people. I look forward to you returning in the future, and I'd just like to say thank you so much for everything you've done for me, my team, and I am just so excited to see what the future's going to hold working alongside you.
Well, those are lovely sentiments. I echo them back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please consider watching some of our other fascinating chats here. If you'd like to stay up to date with all the latest podcasts, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell below.